whenever you make something external to yourself the center of your happiness, you're in trouble. The center of your happiness comes from within. And there's a lovely quote that says, when it's getting dark, it means it's time to come home. You've been out long enough playing outside. Now it's time to come home. So when it gets dark, when you start suffering, when there's pain and angst, that's like it's time to go home now. And home is inside. The love and bliss we're looking for is inside. If you look for love and bliss outside, it might sound really worthy and idealistic and romantic, but you're going to run into a brick wall.
David Edwards is co-editor of the Media Watch website, Media Lens. He's the author of a short book about ego and the remedy of meditation, which will be published by Mantra Books later this month. His first novel, The Man with No Face, a dystopian, Chomskyan, mystical science fiction thriller, will be published by Roundfire Books in 2026. David has published 5 other books on political, philosophical, and spiritual themes. In 2007, Media Lens was awarded the Gandhi Foundation's International Peace Prize. Media Lens has 72,000 followers on X. I did an episode with my dad about being in your 20s. This interview with David Edwards keeps with this theme. We talk about being insecure in your 20s, finding your bliss, working for yourself, what is wrong with our educational system, and the importance of meditation. So here's David Edwards. Hi, David. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So you told me that I'm 23, and when you were 23, you experienced your first great cataclysm. What do you mean by that? What happened when you were 23?
Well, it wasn't a great cataclysm in the grand scheme of things, but it felt like a before and after moment for me. I spent the whole of my 20s trying to find happiness outside myself. And my particular focus was highly romantic. I mean, I'm somebody who fell in love when he was 10 with a girl in primary school. And when I say fell in love, I mean, I was absolutely devoted to her. It was outrageously intense. I didn't just love her, I loved everything associated with her. I got the dog, where she lived, the car that picked her up from school, took her home. I guess I grew up with the Beatles, All You Need Is Love. And so I was very much looking outside myself and looking to romance to complete me, to fulfill me. And I sort of went through, from that very early time through into my 20s, sort of putting relationships at the center of my life. And that's not a great idea, because relationships can't generally withstand that kind of pressure. When I got to the age of 22, I was living in Sweden and moved in very quickly with a girl, and it went wrong quite quickly. We sort of were having arguments, she was getting upset, and I didn't know why it was going wrong, but I was trying to handle a situation I didn't understand and I couldn't really handle. And so I was hiding my emotions a lot and trying to make it work and suppressing my emotions. And suddenly, one day we were sitting in a restaurant celebrating our 6 months anniversary. And the pressure of trying to look happy in this situation where I knew the relationship was a car crash, and we were in quite a formal underground restaurant in Stockholm, kind of underground place, quite posh, with a few waiters looking very serious. And I think the pretense that I've been maintaining just created this pressure. And I suddenly felt this surge of adrenaline, this anxiety, which was very odd, considering I was sitting in a restaurant with my girlfriend. And my heart started racing, my lungs were pumping, and that classic feeling, I've got to get out of here. And so I went to the toilet and sort of tried to sort myself out, not knowing what was going on. At the time, it felt like a complete before and after moment, because my emotions were out of control. I wasn't able to handle them. I didn't know why it had happened. And so it felt like a bit of a cataclysm, a personal cataclysm. And of course, it affected me for a long time afterwards, because you're then wondering, is this going to happen to me again? Why is it going to happen? How can I stop it happening? A turning point came for me actually when a couple of years later, when I realized, actually, these are my emotions. Why am I afraid of my emotions? Why am I afraid of my adrenaline, my anxiety? And quite a long time after that, I sort of began experimenting with meditation. And I found the ultimate cure for panic attacks. There's a story in I think it's in Buddhism, that says if there's a man-eating tiger running after you, the best thing to do is to jump into its mouth. Just sort of do the unexpected and jump into the mouth of the tiger and you'll be safe. And actually, if you focus on the beating of the heart, the pumping of the lungs, anxiety in your chest, you cut off the vicious circle of the thoughts creating fear, creating more anxious thoughts, creating more fear. But if you redirect your focus to your symptoms of fear, you reduce the thought process. The thought process dies down. And so the thoughts stop generating the adrenaline, which stops generating more thoughts, and the whole thing calms down. And when I worked that out, I was able to cure the whole issue of panic attacks. But at the time, when you're 23, it's never happened to you before. It really is a shocking moment. And I do think panic attacks are completely misnamed, because they're just vicious sort of thought emotion spirals. Thought feeds emotion, which feeds more thought, which feeds more emotion. So you break that link, you focus on the feeling, the thoughts die down, and then the symptoms of anxiety works. It really does work like magic.
Yeah, I do feel like with meditation, that kind of the hardest part is to be okay with the negative feeling you've got in your chest. And what you described when I was at sixth form, when I had like very severe social anxiety, there was a point on a train when I just saw people I knew. It was anxiety about people I knew. It wasn't people I didn't know. It was people I'd already met. And I felt like I should talk to them. It felt like that was the normal thing, but I couldn't do it. And seeing these people come onto the train, just on the opposite side of me, and I felt, oh, this is a really good opportunity to talk to them. And but I just was like, I can't. I physically can't. Like I felt stuck, glued to my chair. So there was
Yeah.
this real battle between what I felt I should be doing and then what I am doing, and not being able to cross that bridge at all. So
Wow.
it just became so identified with the thoughts and getting the emotion getting stronger and stronger. Where I physically had to leave the coach, like you
Yeah.
had to go to the bathroom, the
Yeah.
toilet. I
Was,
had to leave. Yeah.
was there a lot of anxiety going on?
Yes. Yeah. It was a real tight anxiety, real tightness in my chest, horrible, unpleasant feeling that built up. Yeah. So then I had to leave and go into another coach.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where my dad gave me a book on how to deal with anxiety, and I thought I actually need to read this.
Yeah.
This is not good. Before it was like low level, but now this is really really big. And there are other people who get into meditation or spirituality because they have a big cataclysm, or they really have a strong negative emotional energy, and then they realize their only way out is through being aware of it. But I probably will have, maybe I'll have even stronger negative emotion, anxiety, stress that down the line that will push me even more towards meditation than that blip when I was 16. Um, so what happened with that relationship then?
Well, actually, sort of soon after, I realised I was struggling badly. I had lost quite a lot of weight. No, not terrible, but stone and a half or something. So I left and came back to England.
And how did your like you said you were kind of obsessed with relationships, having a relationship that how did that change after that point? Were you so wanting that, yeah, a relationship?
long, slow process for me, because I was sort of very romantic. I mean, I don't know why that is, whether it's the way we brought up, but I really did, up until my late 20s, I really did believe that meeting a wonderful person was the real, that was everything, and so you put a person, a girlfriend, at the center of your life, trying to make her the center of your happiness enough times, and it keeps going wrong. You start to think, actually, maybe when you put somebody at the center of your life, it just doesn't work out. Maybe you've got to have something else at the center of your life. Then you can have a healthy relationship with somebody who's part of your life, but not the absolute focus of your life. Maybe relationships can't withstand that kind of stress and pressure. And so I sort of slowly, through pain, through hitting my head against the wall enough times, I sort of realized, I suppose I became a bit more cynical as well. I thought, well, this is actually a bruising business. And I lost a lot of my idealism. And actually, I think I became much more reluctant to show my feelings and to express my love than I had been initially. I mean, I came into it thinking, if you love someone and you tell them you love them, and you care how much you love them, they'll love you back. I found it doesn't really work that way. You've got to be a little bit more canny than that. You don't need to say these things. If you love them, you should be able to express that in the way you are with them. And if you're kind to them and respect them, they will hopefully respond to that with kindness and respect, without anybody saying, you're the love of my life, you're the center of my life. I think there has to be a little bit of reserve there. So I initially became more cynical, and then started to mature into realizing, yes, you can have somebody who's really very much part of your life, but don't make them the absolute center of your life. And I mean, what I learned quite a lot later is that whenever you make something external to yourself the center of your happiness, you're in trouble. The center of your happiness comes from within. And there's a lovely quote that says, when it's getting dark, it means it's time to come home. You've been out long enough playing outside. Now it's time to come home. So when it gets dark, when you start suffering, when there's pain and angst, that's like it's time to go home now. And home is inside. The love and bliss we're looking for is inside. If you look for love and bliss outside, it might sound really worthy and idealistic and romantic, but you're going to run into a brick wall. And I think if karma makes any sense to me, it's that karma isn't, if I'm rude to somebody's going to be rude to me. Maybe it works that way, I don't know. But karma to me is, if you're trying to find an answer in the wrong direction, it's like running into a wall thinking there's going to be an open door there. And so, of course, you're going to hurt yourself. So that's negative karma, is trying to do something that can't be done. And trying to find happiness externally to yourself can't be done. So you will suffer over and over again until you learn the lesson. It's in me. I have to find it. That actually means meditation. It's not just another sort of lifestyle option like Pilates or whatever. It is the only way to find the love and bliss that's within, that's inside. And as long as you're looking for that outside, you're in big trouble.
What was the point where you kind of started, you came across meditation and you came across its value? Was it in your 20s?
Funny enough, it was in the 80s. I started reading about Taoism and the Tao Te Ching and Alan Watts, which I know you're a huge fan. Yeah,
well, I'm interested, how did you even get to the point where you'd be reading the Tao Te Ching? What was did you just stumble across it in a bookshop, or a friend?
I used to go to Sweden on holiday every summer for 4 weeks, which was like an incredible luxury to go to the south coast of Sweden, beautiful beach. It was so natural. It was so beautiful, a bit cold in the water. We were there as kids with my grandparents. And it was such a natural life. We were just cycling through the forest, through the wood by the sea, swimming, playing tennis, and just relaxing. I just had this feeling that there was something so beautiful and natural about it. And I sort of began to associate, even very young, beauty with nature and nature with beauty. What's beautiful is natural. What's natural is beautiful. And at university, I read Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and he was absolutely in favor of that idea. His idea was that if you're in tune with nature, living in a natural way, there is a goodness and a bliss in nature, which you can't find in sort of society. And he actually talked a lot about that when he was living almost in isolation towards the end of his life on a little island, I can't remember, breeding his rabbits. He was doing a lot of gardening and studying the flora. He had moments when he was just so completely alone, completely in nature. He felt a real bliss of meditation. And if you read his book, Reveries of a Solitary Walker, it's like a guide to mindfulness. You know, he says the whole problem with modern man is that we're never in the moment. He says we've got what he calls prévoyance. We're looking forward. We're totally focused on a time that may never come. We're never actually here. And so when I read that his association of happiness with nature in a natural rhythm of life really rang true for me from my own experience, although I didn't really understand my experience. It just had a vague sense there was something amazing. And then actually when I was in Sweden in a second-hand bookshop, I found Nature, Man and Woman by Alan Watts. And he talked about Zen. And that was also very much, even the first paragraph of the book was very much about falling in tune with the natural world. And so I just sensed that there was something real there. And once I read that, that was it then. I was on my way, you know, and I didn't understand Zen at all. I had no clue what Alan Watts was talking about. I sensed there was something there. And I just stubbornly pursued all of that as much as I could since then.
And when you discovered this, was this the same time you were working at that corporate job? Can you just was this the job when you were on like a helpline?
Yeah, I worked in a telesales company for an American telesales corporation in White City, London. And I travelled every day an hour and a quarter on the tube to get there, an hour and a quarter to get back. And there were 15 of us in an office answering calls for computer accessories, which would then be delivered the same day. It was like an old Amazon, you know, rapid delivery.
Okay.
And that company delivered really quickly. So we had red lights and blue lights flashing on the ceiling. If the phones rang more than 10 times, the red light would flash, or the blue light would flash. And if they rang for longer than 15 seconds, people from accounts and sales were expected to rush in and hit the phones. And so I was taking calls all day with this computer, inputting orders for these computer accessories. It was awful, you know. The people there were great, you know, but it was such automatic, tedious work. And I started reading The Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra. And a book that really hit me hard was The Turning Point by Fritjof Capra. Now, he wrote that in 1982, predicting a turning point in human civilization away from fossil fuel type madness economy to a solar economy, renewable energy. So we're still waiting for that turning point that hasn't come yet. So that's a bit frustrating. But so I was reading these books about Taoism and about alternative philosophies. And I was working in this computer accessories company as a sort of like fleshy robot. And it was a huge conflict because they were two completely separate. And people said to me, what are you reading that stuff for? You know? And my family said to me, this is madness. What are you reading about Taoism? And there did come a point, actually, I left that company and went to work for British Telecom. I was managing the department in British Telecom. And I was actually running an office of 12 people, twice my age, 25. I had no management at all. So I was, completely out of my depth. And I was reading books, started reading books by Erich Fromm, who I absolutely adored. Everything by Alan Watts, all these guys, Christmas Humphreys, Teddy Goldsmith, all these guys, Jonathon Porritt. And I thought, I'm finding my work really stressful, managing all these people. And I don't think this sort of enthusiasm for alternative ideas is helping, because I'm kind of divided. I'm doing my job with one arm behind my back. So actually, there came a point where I threw my books away. Taoism, Alan Watts, Christmas Humphreys. I put them away, and I even threw them away. I think I kept a few, but I really did. I turned against it. And but that didn't last very long, because it was so bloody boring to just do this, to be involved in this business world. But then what happened is the whole green thing. 1988, James Hansen, a NASA scientist, stood up before the UN, I think it was, and said, we've got a serious problem with climate change. And so then I started reading a lot about green politics and green philosophy, and I started campaigning for Friends of the Earth in London. We were marching around London dressed as energy efficient washing machines. I've got the photos to prove that, by the way, and it's hugely embarrassing. Everybody thought you were completely mad. I mean, people think you're mad to do about climate change now. Actually, 1989, this hiatus when I've abandoned this philosophy, suddenly reading everything about green politics, green philosophy, how we can change things, activism. That was pretty much that. And I set up a green initiatives group in British Telecom. We were setting up systems for recycling and doing that kind of thing, and I was managing that, which I think didn't do my managerial prospects any favour at all. It suggested I had priorities other than being a man missile maximising profit. So they said to me, yeah, we're happy to do these green initiatives, but all your initiatives have to make a profit within the first year. So it was all about profit, and ultimately it was all about PR, just to try and make BT look good. So that took me to 1990, and I moved outside London. So then the whole thing came to a head when I read Joseph Campbell, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And Joseph Campbell said, if you put something dead at the heart of your life, you will experience life as a deadness. So, for example, as I had, if you put money at the heart of your life, you will experience a deadness in your life. And the further you go into that deadness, you will experience more deadness. You think you're going to get through the tough times, the stress, to find happiness, but you just get more deadness, more responsibility, more stress. So you have to put something that's alive at the heart of your life. And so what might that be? He says, follow your bliss, which sounds twee on the face of it. But he said, find the thing that doesn't just give you pleasure, but gives you such fulfillment, such delight, that you're happy to do it for 10 years for nothing, without getting paid. You're willing to devote 10 years of your life, or whatever it takes, to this. And your reward is doing the thing in itself. You're not concerned about what results. You're certainly not thinking about money. You're not thinking about fame, status. You're doing it because you love to do it. Well, I love to write stories. I love to write sort of observations, philosophical thoughts. I've done that a lot at university when I was 18, 19. I love to write. And I love to read Mysticism, Following Your Bliss. And I was in this management consultancy as group marketing manager, small management consultancy outside London. And one day I had an argument with the chairman who said, David, if you don't know that, you shouldn't even be sitting there. And I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, it was about hugely insulting, humiliating. So it was a lovely sunny Friday afternoon in July July the 12th, 1991, sorry. I was 29. That brings us to the end of the 20s. And handed in my resignation, walked home. It was the best thing I've ever done. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to write. In fact, I told a friend, I said to him, I'm going to be a writer. He said, no. Either you're a writer or you're not a writer. You're not going to become a writer. Live as a writer. Be a writer. Don't try to become one. Fantastic advice. So I think I had £3,000 in the bank. And I spent the next 10 years just writing hundreds of pages of stories and articles, reading everything, because Joseph Campbell recommended read the people you love and then read all the people that they love. So you spread this interest and go deeper and deeper into this interest. And so for 10 years before I started Media Lens with David Cromwell, I just wrote and had no money in the bank, taught English sort of 3 hours a day. When I had enough money, I would go on the Tolle and continue writing there. Then more students would come along. I'd do a bit more teaching. And I went on like that for 10 years. And it was fantastic because to go from a stressful corporate job where I'm managing people and where there's constant pressure on you, to teaching Thai kids of, say, 15 for 3 hours a day in Bournemouth, and then going home, reading anything I wanted, writing anything I wanted, was just heaven. It was heaven. And I never missed the money. And so you have to make something that you love the heart and the center of your life. This is what I was talking about before. You can't make somebody else the center of your life. You've got to find the center of your life in yourself and follow it and don't give a thought. I know people actually, I did a cogitation on this, an article. I got this wonderful backlash from journalists saying that I was a complete arse, which is available online. I love it. It's one of my favorite cogitations. They said, you absolute plonker. I said, you've got to just write what you love and give it away for free and don't give a thought about making money. They said, you bloody idiot. You're just encouraging people to be exploited, because I think they thought I was some editor who was out to exploit young talent or something. I don't know. So they got the wrong end of the stick. But if you just do what you love and don't be goal oriented, that's how you find your bliss, and that's how you make your life feel alive. And that feeling of aliveness is worth so much, and it's worth so much more than having a bit of money or a big car or whatever, a house. That for me, anyway, that to me is the right way to do it.
Yeah, my dad's philosophy is to bring down your outgoings, so to live as simply as possible, so you can have more time to do what you want. Because the more the higher the rent, the more responsibilities, then you kind of get stuck in the 9 to 5.
Henry David Thoreau said he used to make baskets and sell them for money. And he said, I went from wondering how to sell my baskets to thinking, how can I live so I don't need to sell baskets? And I think that's brilliant. That's what I did. I just tried to live really simply, lived in a small room in Bournemouth, And of course, that becomes immensely complicated if you get involved in a relationship. Because then, it's like your dad, it's hugely complex then. But when you're on your own, it's quite easy.
And, with your colleagues, did you sense in your colleagues dissatisfaction and wanting to leave? Were they hating their work as well? And do you even know if some of them are still in that job or in other similar jobs?
I don't know. I think everybody always complains about their work, don't they? Everybody complains about everything, but I don't think they felt the urge to escape the way I did. I mean, I all the time. I was living in London. I lived in London for 5 years. I was in my 20s. I had a social life, lots of friends going out. It's amazing looking back, actually, because, it looks like a fun life from the outside. But I was just desperate to escape from this work. I just didn't understand that if I had somebody telling me what to do every day and I had to be in a certain office from, say, 9 to 6 for 200 days a year, to have 4 weeks holiday. It just felt like a dreadful way to live. I couldn't accept it. And but I don't think a lot of people had that urge to escape. I think their plan was to work their way through to achieve freedom. I think that's what they do. And so they sort of dreamed of promotion, have more money, move to a nice house outside London, and maybe move to a more comfortable place, a more comfortable job at a higher level. I think that's how most of them thought. But yes, I know people who, amazingly, I told you about that Computer Accessories Corporation, a friend of mine, has been doing that kind of work ever since then, for the last 40 years, which is mind-blowing to me. And my managers, I know, the people above me, they continue doing that kind of work. So, and life goes very quickly, you know. I mean, from 0 to 30 seems to last for an eternity, but 30 to 60 goes really fast. And if you blow those 30 years on work you're not enjoying, I mean, I can feel myself that 63, regret is a powerful force as you get older. You know, it's very easy to think back and think, oh my God, what have I done with those 30 years? So people need to be very careful about that, because you don't want to be there at 60 and think, wow, 30 years.
Yeah, I do occasionally have those kind of deathbed anxiety of, I'm just like lying on my deathbed thinking, why did I do this? Why didn't I do that? And my problem is I'm always like second guessing decisions I make, which is not great, because, you know, you just got to make a decision and just run with it. You know, for example, I'm going to be moving to a flat, moving from my house. So it's a really big change, and I'm moving in with a friend who's been my friend all my life. But you know, it's a big decision. You know, choosing the city, choosing who to be in this flat with, share this flat. So, but yeah, just kind of going with it, like, you know, quitting your job and writing. I'm kind of interested to know, how did you know what your bliss was? Like writing and just basically writing. Was that? Or did you learn that over time, or was there do you have like a moment of inspiration where you're just like, oh my God, this is me. This is what I want to do.
I've got huge reservations about Ernest Hemingway, the way he killed animals, just shot birds out of this world. If you read his story, A Clean, Well-Lighted Place, you know, I think it was his favorite short story. I absolutely love that story. It's really short, really simple, but you can feel that he's feeling bliss when he's writing the story. You can feel it. It's like a meditation. He's there. He's totally at peace with what he's writing, and it's blissful. And it was clear to me early on when I was writing my little stories, you know, my first attempt at little observations and stories, that I went into, especially with fiction, actually, I think you go very much into your feelings. If you're doing it from the head, it doesn't work. But if you go into your feelings, and if it's some really strong emotion of love or sadness or regret or nostalgia, whatever it is, if you're in your feelings, there's a kind of a resonance that you can feel, and if you stay in it, you can transmit it to the printed page, the keyboard. But so if you're communicating from the head, you can affect people on a head level. But if you are writing from the heart, you can touch people on a heart level. And to me, that's a blissful. I mean, I could feel that was a beautiful meditative thing to do. And that's actually true also of political writing. Sometimes I'm writing from my head and it's just got nothing. It's got no life to it. It's mechanical, boring. If I'm feeling it, you know, if I'm writing from some passion or compassion, like about the suffering of Gaza at the moment. I wrote an article recently about a child who was dying of starvation. And if you write from the heart about that, even though you're putting loads of facts and figures, you are still a meditative thing. And you can feel that I can feel the bliss and love as I'm writing. And, you know, I think if you can do it right, people can feel that when they read it. So to me, that there's a double thing going on. One, you feel the bliss when you're writing. But then if you're writing something that's helpful, like really everything I've written has been about something that's helped me in some way. If I've read Joseph Campbell, Follow Your Bliss, Do What You Love, that's helped me just so enormously. That's blissful. Then if I'm writing about it in a way that's true to how I feel, and it helps other people, then that's wonderful as well. So everything I've written, for example, my first book, Free to Be Human, it was just the whole point of that book was to say to people that had been through what I'd been in my 20s is if you feel despair, understand that you're basing it on a version of reality that's been manufactured for you by interests that do not have your best interests at heart. The despair you feel is based on a version of the world that is not real, not true. And the whole point of that was to say, wow, you've doubted everything else. Now you can doubt the despair. And that's how I felt when I read Chomsky, Fromm, Joseph Campbell, all these guys, Howard Zinn, Edward Hearn. I realized that, yes, you know, this version of the world that we think is reality, there's no way out. There's a cul-de-sac. Life is this desperate, terrible place. Is actually based on a completely fake manufactured version of reality. That's what I've always tried to do. If it's helped me, and I know it's helped me, I'm sort of, there's part of me that automatically thinks, right, how can I help people with that? Can I write that down in a way that helps people? If I can, great. I mean, it's just wonderful for me to try and pass that on. So it could be any little lesson I've learned myself, but often it's stuff I've read, you know, from these, you know, great thinkers and mystics. And so for me, that's just such a bliss to write about things that I love, that I find interesting, that I think can be helpful.
Yeah, I resonate with that when I've been trying to get more into writing, and recently writing my video essay. As I'm writing it, I feel very peaceful because I feel like it's all coming quite naturally and organically, and I feel like even if someone were to read or listen to the words and not actually understand the content, but they could somehow, the peace that I am experiencing will be transmitted to them. So just exactly. By listening, yeah. So it's not about what I'm saying specifically. It's like how I'm phrasing things, how I'm speaking, and you know, yeah.
I feel when you produced your On Being Alone video that got 1.3 million views, did you have a special feeling when you did that? Because that clearly helped a lot of people.
Yeah, that's exactly, because I was really kind of in a content place at the time when I was making the video. I was just like, I wrote the script really effortlessly, really quickly on the train.
Always a good sign.
Yeah, on the train back from my grandma's back to university, because I just went to visit her, and I just like wanted to just get all this out. It was really easy. Then got back, you know, put the video together and just the next day really quickly, because it just felt so easy, and it just kind of came out of me. It didn't feel like I had to force myself to sit down and do it. It was just like it was coming out. Uploaded it. I didn't really think much about it at all. It just felt like something that needed to come out, needed to be made, and I feel that's similar to the one I'm doing now, which hopefully, will be received in a similar way. Because I mean, I think there was one comment on that video which said that I've been to hours upon hours of therapy, but this video has done more for me than all that therapy, which is kind of crazy. But I guess, I don't know, with therapy, you're kind of talking about yourself, and maybe you're not finding that space around yourself that you would find with meditation. I don't know. I mean, that's a general statement about therapy, but maybe that could be a problem, that you're just talking, and maybe strengthening your sense of self, and maybe you need that peace and stillness.
Yeah, working with the mind, aren't you? Therapy can be helpful at that. But yeah, meditation is working with your heart and learning to take a distance from your thoughts, not identifying with everything that's going on through your head as if I think it, therefore it's real. You create a distance, you observe the thoughts. That gives you some space, so you're not the slave of your thoughts. You can either choose to go with them. It's like a clutch on a car. You can lower the clutch and engage with the engine. You can identify with the thought and go with the thought, or you can just observe the thought and not depress the clutch, not engage the engine. And that's especially true with anger. You know, we make a decision. Somebody insults us and we depress the clutch and say, you know, fuck off. Or you just don't depress the clutch and observe what's going on. So with that, meditation does help you learn to be aware that you've got that choice.
I've been reading The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and he says, actually, imagine your thoughts as a person, like a roommate or someone who's like talking to you. And it was quite comical. Like, I was just walking along the beach and thinking, and then I was like, I just turned to my side and imagined that there was like a person who just shut up and was just like looking at me blankly, and I was like, I don't think I needed that commentary. Like, okay, thanks, I guess, but didn't need it. I'm just walking along the beach. I don't need you to think about what I'm going to be doing later today, or some videos I've been watching, or I don't know, just like, I don't need the commentary. You know, it was quite inane. It wasn't like, you know, really. But that's an important point that I read in The Untethered Soul, is that, you know, it's not just some thoughts are the ones we don't want and other thoughts are me. I think, you know, like, these thoughts are the ones that are me, that these are the ones to listen to, and these are the ones that are, you know, unhelpful and negative. Like, even the positive ones, it's all still kind of a phantom, and it's all still hypnosis into a kind of a false sense of self, but that's not who you are. You're the awareness looking at the thoughts.
Your thoughts are exhausting, actually, and you know, unhappy thoughts are painful and exhausting. But actually, if you notice, even when you're happy and you're having a lot of positive thoughts, it's bloody exhausting. That's one of the, we'll talk about that another time, I don't know, but about happiness. You know, even when you're happy and something's gone well and you've achieved something you've been wanting to achieve for a long time, you're getting all these positive thoughts. It's great, and there's some satisfaction, yeah, but it's still painful because the thoughts just go on and on and on, beating. It's like a grinding machine that just goes on of its own volition. So, yeah, to me, there's happiness, which has a component of pain in it, and there's ecstasy or bliss, which you experience in meditation, which is a mixture of bliss and love. If you want to talk about actual happiness, that's it. But you don't call it bliss, loving bliss, if you like. And what we call happiness, what we generally aim for, some positive result in the outside world, is misnamed because you can't actually attain happiness that way. There will always be suffering. I got into trouble with this actually at university. John Stuart Mill in Utilitarianism said that happiness is pleasure in the absence of pain. And I wrote an essay on it with my tutor, and I said, well, this has to be wrong. Happiness can't be pleasure in the absence of pain, because pleasure and pain are interdependent. A cool glass of water gives you wonderful pleasure when you're in the desert wandering, but if you're not particularly thirsty, it doesn't give you any pleasure at all. Pleasure and pain are related, so the hungrier you are, the more you enjoy your meal. You can't have pleasure in the absence of pain. Pain must be nearby. And I got a 2-2 for that essay, so that he wasn't very impressed. I think I did it in the exam as well, and I think they thought I made it up. And later I read in Buddhist books, Tibetan Buddhism, they made that point exactly.
Well, I'd like to rewind back a little bit to university you mentioned there. When you graduated from university, did you have particular ambitions or plans coming out? And what did you study first of all? And then what did you want to do? And then, were there any ideas about your 20s that weren't kind of coming true? I'm not sure when you started this job you were talking about, but yeah.
So yeah, I studied. I did a general course with the first year because my A levels were pretty terrible. I mean, I found school so boring, and I found A levels really boring. I wasn't particularly good at taking that. I learned that there is a technique for taking exams, but I didn't know that in the beginning. So I didn't do very well at A levels. So I got into university. I did sort of general first year, and part of the course was politics. And I read Hobhouse on liberalism. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I read Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes, I don't know if you've heard of him, on a book called Leviathan. Mm-hmm. And Hobbes sort of analysed human nature, the mental processes, emotional processes, the nature of man in society and in nature. And he thought that man was naturally antagonistic, so it would be a war of all against all. And he tried to build an idea of society based on his understanding of human nature. I thought, wow, this is really fascinating. This is an old book, I don't know, it was the 17th century. And I thought, I'm reading this guy, I can hardly understand his English, but he's trying to understand the world from first principles about nature of emotions and thoughts. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. Never read anything like it. Then I read Rousseau as well. I thought, wow, really, this stuff's actually interesting. What's interesting from this, hopefully from other people's point of view, is that whereas I'd been a sort of below average student before, I actually became, in the top tier of tutorials. There were 3 of us who were aiming for a first, simply because I'd gone from being bored out of my mind to being interested. And I think, we've got to be very careful not to judge people too quickly if they're not performing academically. It could be because it's too bloody boring for them, and they're interested, they're more alive, they're too alive, or whatever. So I did politics and philosophy. I had no interest in where that was going to lead me job-wise. And I was quite shocked in my 3rd year when they had these corporations coming around trying to get people interested in getting jobs, and they had Roundtree giving away these pictures of a Kit Kat. And everybody seemed to think it would be amazing to work for Roundtree selling Kit Kats. I thought, you mind, we've been eating Hobbes and Rousseau in advertising. I thought it was, actually a bit childish. I felt a sense of betrayal, actually, which is a bit idiotic. But so I left university, had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I used to sit on my parents' lounge floor with the newspapers and look at the jobs ads, working as a clerical assistant, working telesales, working cold sales, or traveling sales, going around selling. I sort of applied for things. I worked in a factory bottling wine bottles. I lasted one day. I spent the mornings about 5 hours putting paper cones on this fancy sort of herd of wine bottles in Kent. And it was just absolutely mind-blowing. You just couldn't believe people could do that for one day. And in the afternoon, I had to stack these wine bottles for 4 hours or something. I thought, Jesus, this was like just for a machine. Then I worked as a postman. I did a bit of industrial labouring, stacking shelves, and then so then I went to Sweden. I thought I've just got to get away from here and try something new. And I was guided by my romantic impulse because I'd gone to Sweden every summer and fallen in love with Swedish girls. So my basic mission in going to Sweden was to meet a wonderful Swedish girl. And sure enough, it took me 1.5 years, and I did, and it was a complete disaster. So, as Truman Capote said, more tears are shed, more tears are wept for prayers answered than prayers unanswered.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So in Sweden, I worked in a a big supermarket, and then I washed dishes for 4 months, and then amazingly in those days the Swedish government paid you to learn Swedish, so I did that. I learned Swedish. That was great, and then I did loads of English teaching. But yeah, I was completely lost. I had no idea what.
So you had no like goal in mind. It was just from one job to the next. It was just like maybe you had a romantic goal. Let's get a Swedish girl.
Yeah. I had a romantic goal. I wanted to find the love of my life, and then I'd be happy. Yeah, but how are you going to earn money? Well, we'll fix that when I get to it. But I couldn't conceive of any job that I wanted to do. People say, I want to be a dentist. How do you want to be a dentist? Keep somebody's mouth all day, 30 years. How do you know you want to do that job? You're willing to commit to. Anyway, so I learned after hammering away at this wage slavery and salary slavery, the real answer is to work for yourself, and that to do the thing you love and try to make that work, but try not to be goal oriented. It's like you said about your video, the 1.3 million. That came really naturally and easily, and the temptation then, which I've felt as well, is, how can I repeat that? And of course, the problem with that is that's coming from the head, whereas when you wrote that script, it came from your heart. That's the problem with goal orientation. It takes you into your head, and I've done that. I was a ghostwriter for an environmental writer for a couple of years. She had writer's block, so I kind of wrote for her. And although it's stuff I was interested in, it wasn't coming from my heart, it was coming from my head. And what was amazing was I don't know how many years, about 8 years after I'd left business, I felt pretty much like I was back in the business office, working for someone for money, not doing what I love to do, just writing for money. And I thought, wow, ghostwriting. It's writing, but it's not following your bliss. So it looked like a good answer. And of course, when I was writing for someone else, I had no time or energy to do that. I wrote one article in the first year of writing for her. So you have to be careful not to waste the thing that you love by wasting it on something that looks like the same thing but is actually very different. It's coming from the head. It's not right. So best way to do that, to do your own thing, because when you're doing something for someone else, you're doing it from their perspective, and that's their head and their heart, not yours.
Yeah, I see that. We were talking. You're talking about education. What do you think needs to change in education for us to kind of be naturally want to follow our bliss and kind of not and end up just getting institutionalized in dead-end jobs?
Well, one of the questions you that was on your list was, did you feel insecure in your 20s? Did you feel insecure when you left university? The problem is the whole system consists of very powerful vested interests that all have a really strong interest in seeing that we live in a particular way, that we define happiness as high status consumption based on high status production. The idea is that we're going to conform, change the school uniform for a business uniform, or whether they relax that. But in my day, you have a suit. And the idea is you're going to pursue external happiness in a way that suits those interests, that suits the machine, that the priority of that machine is maximum profits in minimum time at minimum cost. And that machine is all about subordinating people and planet for profit. So you come out of university at, say, 21, you've still got that youthful connection with your heart, with your aliveness, and everything is trying to persuade you, obviously massively, including education, is trying to get you to go in this direction. Conformity. I mean, education is is really about persuading you to subordinate your feelings to the higher goal of exam success, which is then you're supposed to go on to university success and then career success. It's supposed to be a steady process. So I was absolutely horrified. I was 16. We called them O levels then. GCSE, are they still
GCSEs?
Mm-hmm. And 16, beautiful summer day, spring day, May, June, July, sitting in my room, revising for these exams every single spring, every single summer. And it's so important, because if you don't get that, you're not going to university, you're not going to get a decent job, you're going to be doing some awful job, and you're going to suffer the rest of your life. So what does that do? You've got all of these feelings of what you love, of what you want to do, which is still very much alive in you. And this whole process is training you, hammering you every day. Subordinate that feeling. That feeling is not right. It's a threat. If you follow that feeling, you're going to arrive at disaster. So you have to subordinate your feelings, and then you can have success. But of course, crushing your feelings is the ultimate failure. And so people, actually, when you encourage people to meditate and say, just watch your feelings, how do you feel? A lot of people say, I don't know what I feel. What? I don't know what I'm feeling. And I know people who said to me, I feel incredible sadness and anger. I said, well, where do you feel it? And they said to me, well, I can't feel it. It's just like a fuzziness in my head. So they can't actually feel the sadness or the anger. So this is what the system has done to us. So the whole thing is pushing us in that direction. And how do you reform that? Well, I mean, it's a million miles away. We can't even stop them putting billions of pounds into warfare rather than welfare. So there's no chance of reforming the education. You have to just reform. You have to be true to yourself. And so coming back to the point about being insecure in your 20s, yes, absolutely, you're insecure in your 20s. Of course you are. Look at what the world's trying to do to you. And that's not a bad thing. You can use the pain. You can use the resistance to their conformity, what they're trying to impose on you, to guide you. But just stay in touch with what you're feeling and let your bliss guide you. What do you love doing? Do what you love doing. Don't do anything out of duty or obedience or because it's going to lead to wonderful results later. Do what you love now. It's a kind of, is it selfishness? Well, yeah, it is. But it's a kind of enlightened selfishness, because if you do follow that feeling, you do reach a place of bliss, which is also a place of love. And then you do have genuine love that you can share with them. Whereas if you do things out of duty, I mean, even if it's just looking after your parents when they're ill, if you do it out of duty, it creates so much resentment. People say, oh, God, parents say, I gave the best years of my life to that kid. So the way to reform the system, as it were, is to stay true to your own heart, your own bliss and love. And then you don't need to reform the system because you've reformed your own experience of the world.
And I feel like education it makes everybody the same, because intelligence is like, how does everyone do on this specific exam? And what grades did you get on these final exams to get you into the next stage? It doesn't really cultivate your kind of inner creativity or what you're really interested in, because it's all the same exams everyone gets all across the country. And also it's about passing exams. So we're spending years upon years memorizing things to complete an exam, but then you'll forget all that stuff several years later, and you think, I came out of I think back all my time at education and think I feel like it was a waste of time, really. I mean, I think it could, there could have been so like life skills that's completely missing, just general life skills. Like how to handle money, relationships, what to do when you're stressed, anxious,
Absolutely. Cooking, that's another good one.
Cooking, yeah. Yeah, you just kind of like you're just kind of thrown out of you come out of university, you've got student loans, and yeah, I don't know, and I'm from my like looking around at other people trying to get jobs coming out of university is so many places need experience, and it's like, well, I've got some grades, but it's like, no, we need some experience, and it's like, well, yeah, I've got some letters on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I do. For me, I feel like if I could change a few things, it would be like daily meditation, like morning and evening. Maybe instead of like in first school, it was prayer, but you know, it was just like we were just doing it because we had to do it. It wasn't from the heart, as you say. It was just like, yeah, reciting words. But I actually got I got a copy of the Bible today because I want to figure out what those prayers are all about. But yeah, just meditation, philosophy, like Stoicism. I really like. I'm really into Stoicism. Life philosophy could be really helpful. Just basic things like, yeah, separate the things that you can control and the things you can't control. That's that's a tenet, main thing of Stoic philosophy. And if everybody was taught that from an early age, I can't even imagine the amount of peace in the world.
Yes.
so much less stressful.
Yeah. Well, it's like Gaza, or it was like Iraq, or it was like the sanctions on Iraq when 500,000 babies under Hobbes died. It was filed. You know, you engage with these things, but you don't let them destroy you, because the world has always been, mad and devastating. Always will be devastating. The mind of man is mad. Our minds are mad. Our minds are a huge problem. So we do what we can, but as you said, the Stoic idea to differentiate between what you can change and what you can't. And I don't agree with self-destructing because of the horrific actions of others. You do what you can. You accept that we're tiny little drops of humanity, of consciousness, in a huge ocean of human consciousness. What do we think? Do we think save the world ourselves? That's just another type of egotism.
Yeah, for sure. I almost envision in my ideal education system, one of the first lessons you get is, okay, so you've got this thing called the mind, and it doesn't care about your happiness. This is what it does. It's like full on like science about the brain. Robert Wright's book, Why Buddhism is True, that should be like required reading, I think.
Oh, here somewhere.
Mm-hmm. I love it because, yeah, it's just there's no like stuff about reincarnation or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, it's actually Buddhism kind of predicted what science would kind of figure out later down the line about how the mind works, which is really cool. Is there like so when you were in your 20s, did you kind of get into a meditation practice? Did you kind of what was your like rituals? Did you have any rituals when you were in your 20s?
Yeah, my ritual was going out to the pub in the evening, having a couple of pints, and after working at British Telecom, we'd go and have a couple of pints, and then go and do Tai Chi. And actually, Tai Chi, I do a lot of Qigong now. Tai Chi, it's difficult for me, but Qigong I can do. I love it. But so I used to do Tai Chi after a couple of pints with some friends, and that was madness. And then I experimented with meditation in my 20s, 27, 28. And I thought it was about concentrating on your breath, and you just had to focus on your breath. And, that didn't seem to be going very well. I had all these thoughts. What's happening? Aren't these thoughts supposed to stop when you meditate? I must be a terrible meditator, because I've just got loads of thoughts. So I gave up. I thought, this isn't working. I just can't do it. I had no idea. That's why it's so dangerous. Particularly, I think, to follow Western commentators often get the wrong end of the stick, and you really need to rely on enlightened mystics that do exist, And if you can get hold of their original words, not interpretations of their words, and not kind of cut and paste versions of what they said, it really does help you. And that's what helped me. So yes, I experimented in meditation, and then in my late 20s, and then I got into Tibetan Buddhism when I was in my early 30s, and then started meditating when I was 35. So it's quite late, but so meditating more or less constantly from 35, building it up more and more. Initially doing breathing meditation and a lot of Tolle, which is a Tibetan Buddhist giving and taking meditation, which I thought was really lovely actually, where you imagine somebody suffering it could be, for example, obviously somebody in the family or friends suffering, in pain. You imagine they're suffering as a ball of dark smoke. You breathe it into your heart, it dissolves in your heart and becomes like a bright glow, golden glow of light, and then you send that golden glow of light into them, imagining it healing them and taking away all of their suffering. And I found that really, wow. I found that sometimes very powerful, and I did feel love and bliss. That was the first time I felt it in meditation. I thought I was imagining it. I thought maybe, you've just been holier than thou, convincing yourself you've achieved something. But it kept happening. And it helped me when I was actually ill in my early 30s, actually, 37. And it helped me then. So that was what actually that thing where I was feeling people suffering, sending bliss. That's what really got me into meditation properly. And then when I started reading Osho, he talks all about that. He's all about feeling. He's all about that. Just reading lots and lots of Osho. And I say lots. My quotes file, which I've cut and pasted from his talks, is about 4,700 pages. So I spent the last 17 years because he did about 400 books of his discourses. The quality of the discourses is just out of this world. It's just incredible how brilliant his discourses were. And he just helps you so much because he understands you better than you understand yourself. And things happen to me that I then read in him. So then that really got me into it, watching my feelings, sadness, whatever it is. And that became my just absolute meditation practice.
Is there, if there's someone in their 20s listening, who's feeling like they want to kind of learn more and see what they can do to deal with their monkey minds, what book would you recommend, or what person do you think is a good entry point into meditation and mindfulness?
I would say Osho, the Book of Secrets.
Okay.
Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, is excellent. I would recommend Eckhart Tolle's website. It costs you a bit of money, but it's not that much. And he does these monthly talks and answers questions on a monthly basis. Tolle's brilliant. Anything by Osho, you can get his discourses online free. Just, for example, there's a website that's got all of his books. You can find any book on Tao or on Zen or on Sufism, and they'll be brilliant. For example, just that basic idea. There's one called Tao, the Three Treasures. There's one called The People of the Path, about Sufism. All of these books will really help you a lot. Those books, for example.
And I feel like we need to kind of define meditation, because we've used the word a few times. What would your definition be of meditation?
Well, ordinarily, you've got this thought process going on, and we're pouring all of our attention into it. I mean, in fact, I was doing it last night in bed. I woke up at 4:00, and my thoughts were spinning around, lots of thoughts, some negative ones, some positive ones. And so what we normally do is put all of our attention onto our thoughts. So a thought comes along, we jump on the thought and ride it into the next thought. The next thought, we jump on that one and that ride. And we keep following this chain of thought. And it's quite amazing in meditation when you start off with one thought and suddenly you're all the way over here. You start having this thought about what you're going to buy in the supermarket. I should say the ecological shop. And then next thing you know, you're in some memory of a war film or something, or a science fiction. You say, how the hell did I get there? So that's the normal thing. There's just this mad mind goes on and on, full attention. Meditation is when you take attention away from the thought process to some other object. So it can be the breathing, it can be a candle, it can be your hands, it can be your electric toothbrush. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, I've noticed that your mood is, if you brush, 2 minutes, if you've got one of those toothbrushes that goes from, it's like goes for 2 minutes, yeah? If you focus quite intently on where you're brushing and how you're brushing for 2 minutes, you feel better after the 2 minutes than before. If you do 5 minutes of taking your attention away from your thoughts into your hands, so for example, how do I know I've got hands now? I can feel the tingling in my hands. I can feel the blood. I can feel the pressure in my hands. I can do it with my feet. It's absolutely extraordinary. It's so counterintuitive that you can't believe it's true. But if you do that for 5 minutes, your mood is, not always, but often, if you're doing it, you're actually in your hands and feet. The mood is massively improved. And my favorite meditation is to take attention away from my thinking and put it into my chest here or my lower belly. And so, I mean, my dad died 5 years ago. He was stuck in hospital for the last 4 weeks of his life. He couldn't see anyone. None of the family could visit him. I was abroad, so I couldn't visit him. He was stuck in hospital for 4 weeks. We finally let him go and said, well, he can go home now. Within 24 hours, he was dead. He died, kidney failure. And it was just such a horrible, painful thing. And I was grieving deeply, and as we all were. And it was just so much worse because we couldn't see him before he died, And so I just sat down, as I've done many times. Our dog died and other times. And I had this ball of pain in my chest, this sadness, which can be so intense that you feel almost claustrophobic, you want to escape. But I just watched this sadness and this pain, and I watched it for an hour, or an hour, 15 minutes, or whatever. And the pain, if you do that long enough, the pain is digested. It's a bit like we were talking about panic attacks. When you stop fueling the thoughts, the emotions start to die down. The thoughts die down, and the emotion starts to dissipate because there's no thought propelling it, and there's no fuel from the thought process because you're not putting attention. So you're cutting off the thought, the supply of fuel, and the sadness dissipates. And when the thoughts die down sufficiently, there's a chain of thoughts. It's like a stream, but it's made of like connected thoughts. A gap can appear in the thoughts. And through that gap, and this is the revolutionary experience that I had through that Tonglen meditation I've mentioned, is when you focus enough on the sadness first dissipates. And then because there's a gap in thought, you experience it like a spark of love and bliss. And it spreads through your chest, and it can spread through your body. And it's a feeling of love and bliss. And I experienced that 4 days after my dad died by focusing on the sadness I felt. And wow, I mean, this is the potential of meditation to take something absolutely catastrophic and not just to help you cope, but to alchemize it, transform it into something wonderful. experience of love and bliss.
Oh, yeah, that's a lovely explanation. And for those people who are having the thoughts, well, how can meditation help me do things in the world? I think I like how Eckhart Tolle you talked about. He separates your life and life situation. And in order to understand what to do in your life situation, you need to kind of get in touch with life to kind of have productive action in your life situation by just being still and going to the source of thoughts. And then you can have like higher quality thoughts and make better decisions and know what to do from kind of connecting with life, and not so in your same thought patterns that have been kind of going on repeat like over and over. I feel if you're in your 20s and you're feeling like you're in a bit of a rut, just to kind of let go of all of the thoughts that you've been identified with, as easy as that sounds, and be present, and then see what comes up from there. See what comes up from just being from awareness, and then follow that. I think that's really important.
Totally agree. It's surprising, actually, in meditation, how if you do become quite meditative, thoughts pop up into your head that you would not normally have, with a clarity and a sort of a rationality that is sort of beyond your normal mind. And it could be a problem that you couldn't solve. And yes, I do think you get an unusual clarity, sort of access to a sharper intelligence.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we've been talking for about an hour and 15 minutes, so I think that's a good time to wrap up. So thanks, David, a lot for chatting to me, and I'll hopefully get you on again to talk about your book. So yeah, thank you.
Your pleasure. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.